Here we are just 2 months into 2023, and to say Forspoken is the gaming community's first punching bag of the year would be an understatement. I know how this YouTube stuff goes. There's more competition than ever, so a lot of times creators come up with the craziest takes to attract viewers. The fact of the matter is, outrage sells, but a lot of the times that outrage is blown way out of proportion. So you're probably wondering, is that the case for Forspoken? Well, I'd have to say the internet is mostly right this time around. Forspoken isn't the worst thing that I've ever played, but this is a mediocre game, and the lengths I've seen people go to defend this mess is insane. Before we get into the bloodbath, allow me to at least share one positive thing about this game. I don't want anyone feeling like I didn't give this game a fair shake. I spent 38 hours with Forspoken, and in that time, I cleared out most of the side quests and I maxed out the game's skill trees, so I am more than qualified to talk about this game. And the truth is, the two redeeming qualities about this game is the combat system and the traversal system in it. The combat in Forspoken is fun. In this game, you are given access to magic elements of earth, water, and fire, and you're given access to light abilities later in the game, which I'll touch on later. You basically play as the Avatar. Each element has 3 physical spells and like 8 ranged abilities that you can cast. It's actually overwhelming at first, seeing as the game's controls are not intuitive. But like anything else, with enough practice, you do become better at it. And once you reach that point in the game where you can enter a flow state, you begin to mix and match spells quickly, which creates this whole spectacle on screen. The particle effects in your spells is some of the best part of the game's visuals. I mean, the combat is the sole reason that I did not give up this game earlier, and man, I wish I did. Forspoken feels like Square Enix put together a dope combat system, and once they finished completing the combat, they sat back and said to themselves, what's this game about? Everything outside of combat and traversing the environment feels like a rarely cooked steak. Just a lot of half ideas never fully fleshed out, which is a shame seeing as this game had so much potential. It starts with our hero Frey. I could not tell you much about her outside the fact that she's a New Yorker who gets transported to another universe that's in trouble, and she's granted magic abilities to help the people of that world. She has no real motivations, her personality is bland, and it doesn't help the fact that her face as well as everyone else's is poorly animated. Seriously, look how fine Frey's voice actress is in real life compared to how she's animated in the game. That mess is disrespectful, especially considering they released this game close to Martin Luther King Day and right before Black History Month. I don't feel like I got to know her after her numerous interactions with people, and boy are those interactions bad. One of the biggest critiques that I've seen about this game is the game's dialogue being cringy. The problem with that critique is cringe is such a subjective topic. It really comes down to what the individual interprets that is, so in my opinion, that critique is a little bit low IQ. What I will say is that the writing is subpar in this game, but more importantly, the delivery of said writing is flat out awful. There's no emotion in anyone's performance, so there's no sense of urgency in anything you're doing. It felt like Square had a tight budget for this game, so they could only rent out a studio for 2 hours, and then they called in the actors and said, hey, y'all gotta record y'all lines now. And in that 2 hours, the entire game's story was recorded. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, it felt like everyone's first take was used in this game, which led to what I believe many of you would call cringy. The good news is that the parkour is fun. I enjoyed my time flipping and dipping all over the land, but I would have enjoyed it more if it felt alive. One of my fears I had about playing this game after playing the demo came true. This is a big, and I mean big, open world with nothing to offer outside of random enemy spawns. Some of the environments look nice, but you have to put stuff in it. Why would I care to save a world with nothing living in it? Forspoken feels like it takes place in Australia if all the Australians on Earth disappeared. You're just left with great white sharks, poisonous spiders, and kangaroos that want to box you like it's Tekken. I saw someone on Twitter had the nerve to say this game needed a big open empty world so Frey can perform her parkour. I'm sorry, but Ezio Auditore would beg to differ. You can have an open world that feels alive. I mean, a recent example would be Hogwarts Legacy. There's a moment when I'm running around the school just trying to collect pages when a ghost couple appears out of the wall and they start arguing. Then the female ghost chase the male ghost down the hallway as they continue to argue. It was funny, and it's little things like that that make a game feel more immersive. People want to feel like they're playing a labor of love, and there's nothing wrong with that. This game's mission structure, though, is far from it. It felt like a chore at times because a lot of the missions boil down to Destiny style of defend the computer from waves of enemies types of missions. Not to mention, a lot of the boss fights repeat themselves in the dungeons. At least in Elden Ring, when the repeated bosses would show up, they had some type of modifier on them. These repeated boss fights made the second half of the game drag for me because by the time I was 15 hours in, I was completely overpowered. Nothing challenged me. I was able to turn my brain off in just just slaughter bosses. And no more evident than that is in the final hour. The final act is full of what was supposed to be epic boss fights, but I never took any damage because I was so overpowered. The game had too many side quests and they were just way too generous with skill points. And the crazy part is that I didn't do all the side quests. I think being overpowered stems from the fact that the game had too many skill points lying around the entire map, similar to how you would collect them in Crackdown. You just gotta pick them up. Combine that with the skill points that you would get from missions, and you were just far too strong in this game. In the final hour, the game also introduces a new skill tree in the final boss fight, that light skill tree that I was talking about, so you don't even get to enjoy it. Not to mention, you didn't even need it. I was so overpowered by the end of the game. I got to the final fight and it didn't even require me to utilize my full skill set. I just spammed the same moves over and over and over. A good boss fight, that forces you to use all the tools that you've learned over the game to overcome the obstacle. But not in this game. I used the basic pea shooter that you get at the start of the game. There is one plot twist in the final act of the game that made me sit up and I'm like, okay, this is cool. But then that's met with one of the worst boss fights that I've seen in a long time. This game somehow made riding a dragon lame. When I was in the middle of the game, I would have told you this game was okay if you asked me. But that last act of the game was so bad that I had to drop it down to mediocre. Forspoken is not the worst game that I've ever played, but it is bad. And for that reason, I wouldn't say fuck this game, but it is a hard skip. You just don't need to put yourself through this torture. Just skip it. But if you really want to play this game, I'd recommend waiting until it's on the clearance rack. I'm talking $5 to $10 at GameStop, or catch it during a Steam sale, because this is not it. Now, before I wrap this video up, allow me to address one last thing. I agree, this game is not good, but one critique I've seen going around from the weirdo side of the internet is this game is woke garbage. I just want to say that there's nothing woke about this game. Do not believe that bullshit. This game is about a girl down on her luck, transported to another world and given a second chance. It just so happens to be that she's black, but not once in this game does she bring up her being black struggles. None of the characters you meet are preaching anything. There's literally nothing political or inflammatory about the game. If you follow anybody who said that dumb shit and you didn't pick up the game yet, just know that that is not true. They just don't like a black lead in the game. They're hiding behind a false narrative to push some agenda. I'm gonna be honest, I don't even think they played the game. They're just making shock value content, and to those people I say, shame on you.